Picture a pirate crew gathered around roaring fire on tropical beach, feasting on perfectly roasted pork. Hollywood wants you to believe these sea wolves lived like kings, enjoying fresh banquets every night. But here's the brutal reality that'll shatter every romantic pirate fantasy you've ever had, completely. Most pirates weren't dining on succulent roasts. They were locked in daily battles against rot, desperately trying to keep their meat from turning into putrid, maggot-infested nightmares that could kill them. The ocean wasn't just adventure highway. It was a floating meat locker from absolute hell. Salt air, tropical heat, and weeks without refrigeration turned fresh meat into ticking biological bombs. One wrong preservation method, and a month's worth of food could die overnight with crew morale. Pirates needed calories lasting for months, not dinners that reeked of death by dawn's light.
But that's when these sea wolves got creative in ways that would make modern scientists jealous.
The foundation of pirate meat preservation was something as simple as table salt, but genius application. Heavy dry salting became their first shield against the relentless march of rot, threatening every scrap. Crews packed fresh meat under thick salt layers like building edible snowmen, drawing out crucial moisture.
The brining process was equally crucial. Pirates submerged salted meat in concentrated saltwater barrels.
This wasn't guesswork. It was survival science, learned through bitter experience and countless failed attempts.
If an egg sank in their brine, it wasn't strong enough to preserve anything at all.
If it floated like a cork, they knew they had liquid, keeping meat edible for months.
Smart crews learned to soak preserved meat for hours, then boil hard to pull out salt. The method was effective, portable, and cheap enough that even poorest pirate crews could afford it.
But salt had limits. Humidity could dilute brine. Leaky hoops let contamination seep in dangerously. Salt alone wasn't enough when pirates faced preservation challenges on ships rocking through every weather type. Sun-drying became the next essential step, but it required perfect conditions and careful timing to succeed. Pirates hung strips of salted meat from rigging, turning their ships into floating meat-drying operations.
The process needed steady winds, low humidity, and protection from rain that could ruin everything.
Crew members constantly monitored weather patterns, ready to move meat below deck at first signs of storm. Different cuts required different drying times. Thick pieces needed weeks, while thin strips finished in days. Pirates learned to slice meat with the grain for faster drying and against it for better preservation. The ship's rigging became a complex system of ropes, hooks, and nets designed specifically for meat preservation.
Weather delays meant the difference between survival and starvation during long voyages across hostile seas.
But timing was everything. Too late, and weeks of work could be destroyed in minutes. The biggest challenge wasn't weather, though, Thos. It was local wildlife turning drying sessions into buffets.
Seagulls descended on drying meat like feathered pirates, forcing crews to post lookouts for aerial bandits.
Some crews learned to string meat so high that even boldest seagulls couldn't reach it. Success rates varied wildly depending on where pirates found themselves sailing through different climate zones.
In scorching Caribbean heat, meat could transform into preserved jerky in just 3 to 4 days.
But sail north into cooler, humid climates, and you might as well dry meat in fog.
Pirates operating in warmer waters had huge advantages, explaining why many chose Caribbean over Atlantic. As effective as sun-drying could be, pirates couldn't always depend on good weather for food. When skies turned gray and air grew thick with moisture, they needed weather-independent methods. That's when experienced crews turned to ancient smoking arts, techniques surviving almost anything oceans threw. Smoking was serious business, requiring patience, skill, and safe places for controlled fire without burning ships. Pirates typically saved smoking operations for shore stops, building elaborate racks using scavenged forest materials. The process demanded precise temperature control. Too hot meant charcoal, too cool meant failure. Pirates became incredibly picky about smoking wood, developing preferences that would impress modern barbecue masters completely.
They refused pine or resinous wood because it made meat taste like mouthfuls of ship's tar.
Instead, they preferred hardwoods like oak, some crews storing special smoking wood alongside other supplies, taking up precious cargo space that could have been used for treasure fertility. That's dedication. Real magic happened over 24 to 48 hours, as smoke slowly penetrated each meat piece,
depositing tiny particles that added flavor while creating protective outer layers against bacteria and moisture.
Pirates learned this technique through trial and error, plus observing local Caribbean communities' generational knowledge. Fire safety was absolutely crucial. Open flames around wooden ships filled with gunpowder meant death. Most crews had strict rules about onboard smoking, with captains threatening to maroon rule breakers. Harsh punishment, but considering they were preventing entire vessels from burning down, probably justified completely. But smoking required time, dry weather, and safe harbor, luxuries pirates couldn't always count on.
When chased by naval forces or caught in extended voyages, smartest crews turned to shipboard methods.
Pickling became one of the most reliable preservation methods pirates had at their complete disposal, transforming potentially spoiled meat into something lasting months, while actually improving in flavor over time. The process started with preparing barrels by rinsing with boiling water, then vinegar, sometimes sulfur fumigation.
The pickling solution was carefully balanced: salt, brine, and vinegar, creating acidic environments where bacteria died.
Pirates packed meat into prepared barrels, covered completely with brine mixture, and sealed everything tight. Vinegar became a multi-purpose tool that cleaned barrels, masked off flavors, and extended protein stores' edible life.
When vinegar supplies ran low, clever crews learned creating their own by fermenting spoiled wine on board.
This wasn't just resourcefulness, it was survival innovation, meaning the difference between eating and starving. Perhaps the most ingenious preservation method involved something they had plenty of access to: alcohol itself. While most think of pirates and rum in terms of drinking, alcohol played crucial food preservative roles.
Rum and brandy preservation worked on multiple levels, killing harmful microorganisms and improving flavors.
Pirates packed small meat cuts in barrels with rum, creating merry pork that was preserved and marinated. The challenge was keeping crews from sampling the preservative before the meat actually needed it for survival. Captains strictly controlled access to alcohol-preserved foods, storing them in coolest, hardest-to-reach ship areas. When pirates wanted maximum preservation for longest voyages, they turned to fat sealing, creating airtight protection.
Fat sealing involved cooking meat gently, then submerging under melted fat layers, hardening into impenetrable barriers.
This confit method worked like modern canning. If air can't reach food, spoilage organisms die.
Pirates packed fat-sealed meat into pottery crocks, ensuring thick fat layers maintained seals through rough seas.
The system worked best when sealed containers stayed cool and dark, demanding constant cook attention daily.
When all other preservation methods failed, pirates had one final ace: concentrated survival food called pemmican.
Pemmican was ultimate emergence ration, adapted from indigenous techniques learned during North American coastal raids.
This brick-like mixture of dried meat powder and melted fat created virtually indestructible survival food blocks. A single pound packed 3,500 calories and could last years without spoiling in harsh conditions. Some vessels carried 200 pounds of pemmican, enough feeding entire crews for several weeks. But eating nothing but pemmican led to pemmican dreads, dietary monotony making crews irritable and sluggish. Storage discipline became as important as preservation techniques themselves, requiring constant vigilance and systematic approaches daily.
Preserved meat had to be stowed in lowest, most central ship parts, where temperatures stayed coolest.
Daily inspection became as important as checking sails, knocking barrels, sniffing bungs, skimming surface slime. Ship's cooks and coopers became VIPs, whose expertise meant the difference between survival and starvation at sea. When disasters happened and preserved meat spoiled, pirates made split-second decisions, saving remaining food supplies. Emergency protocols were immediate. Wedge loose staves, lash hoops, transfer salvageable meat into standby containers.
The discipline to throw away questionable food when hungry required long-term thinking, keeping crews alive.
Pirates learned that Spanish gold might glitter, but preserved calories kept sails filled and sword arms steady.
In the unforgiving world of high seas, knowledge and discipline were more valuable than Caribbean treasure.